Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. I'll be giving an update on the ongoing flood situation on the Pearl River and the actions the state of Mississippi is taking to help those impacted by the rising water. Severe weather, which began last Monday, has resulted in rainfall in excess of 12 to 14 inches locally. This rainfall has caused flooding in the Pearl as well as the tributary rivers. As a result, the Ross Barnett Reservoir has filled to capacity and is releasing significant amounts of water from the Pearl River spillway in order to maintain a safe pool level. Because of this water release, counties and municipalities downstream from the reservoir, including the city of Jackson, are experiencing minor to moderate flooding. These floods will affect portions of the lower Pearl River Basin for at least the next 7 days and perhaps as long as the next 10 days. If predictions prove accurate, the Pearl River is expected to crest on Monday, August the 29th at 36 feet. I do want to highlight that this new prediction as of this morning is an anticipated crest in the Jackson area about 24 hours earlier than was anticipated as late as yesterday. So again, early Monday morning, perhaps even late Sunday night. If this happens, there will be dozens of streets in downtown Jackson that will flood. Some businesses, primarily around Town Creek as well. Additionally, there will be streets and homes in northeast Jackson subdivisions near the river that may also flood. I want all Mississippians to know that my administration, including the leadership here at MEMA, is monitoring this situation very closely and actively working to respond as quickly as possible to ongoing and changing developments today and throughout the next 7 to 10 days. Recognizing the critical nature of this situation and in consideration of the health and safety of local residents, I have proclaimed a state of emergency in the areas that have been affected by or may be affected by the severe storms and the flooding. This will allow our state agencies to better assist in our efforts, and it allows to discharge the emergency responsibilities as set forth by Mississippi's comprehensive emergency management plan. I also want Mississippians to know this. The state of Mississippi is as prepared as possible for this flooding. This event is going to be very possibly very similar to the event that occurred in 2020. Mississippi is no stranger to severe weather and flooding, and this has led our agencies to have a tremendous amount of disaster response experience. We saw similar flooding in 2020, as I said, and that experience makes us even more prepared to respond to the next couple of days. So far, MEMA has deployed 126,000 sandbags in preparation for the flooding. Local officials are in charge of distributing those sandbags. Mississippians can get more information on how to get sandbags by contacting their county or their city. Additionally, search and rescue teams are on standby and are prepared to respond at the request of local emergency managers. If you are in need of shelter, you can go to the Jackson Police Training Academy at 3000 St. Charles Street in the city of Jackson. It is open and it is being run by the American Red Cross. MEMA also has drones in the air to assess water levels along the Pearl River. This will ensure that we consistently have the most accurate and up-to-date information on the flood areas and on the water movement. But it's not only the state and its agencies who need up-to-date information on the flood areas and the movement. Those in affected areas need that information also. So first, please continue monitoring news and emergency warning channels like MEMA, MDOT, and the National Weather Service. It's critically important that you know if your home or business will be affected by this flooding. If you are unsure, I encourage you to visit the MEMA website at msema.org, click the August Flooding Information tab, and use the interactive map from the National Weather Service, which will show your flood risk. We have here in front of me today a couple of maps that we might refer to as questions are asked, but these maps give a pretty good indication not only of the areas that were flooded in 2020, but also the areas that might be flooded based upon the various potential levels that the water may rise to in the coming days. I cannot overstate how important taking action now is. I mentioned earlier that the change literally over the last 24 hours is that the peak in Jackson is going to occur approximately 24 hours than was originally thought. That could change as well. The fact is that daylight hours are going to be minimal between now and when the height of the flooding occurs. The actions that you take now can help you protect your own life and help you protect the lives of your family members. Some of the things I just want to mention that you can do to prepare include collecting important documents, records, and valuable items, moving them to a safe place in the highest level of your home. During flooding, be sure to stay informed and heed all evacuation orders from local officials. Mississippians should also monitor road conditions. One way to do this is with the Mississippi Department of Transportation website and app. Finally, after any potential flooding, be sure to take photos of your damaged property. You can report any damage to local officials and MEMA with our self-reporting tool on the MEMA website. I want to encourage everybody to operate with the maximum amount of safety. Do everything you can to avoid floodwaters. It doesn't take much water to move an individual, and it really doesn't take that much water even to move an automobile. If you see floodwaters, do as MEMA says. Turn around, don't drown. Again, I'd like to reiterate that more information and more details on this situation are evolving, and I would encourage you to visit and continue to visit msema.org. Again, msema.org. Once there, we have an entire portion of the website dedicated to this specific situation under the August Flooding Information tab. I encourage each Mississippian to take advantage of this. At this time, as you see, we have a number of officials behind me that will be here to not only make remarks but also answer any specific questions that you may have. But at this time, I'm going to turn it over to someone that is no stranger to each of you, our Executive Director of MEMA, Stephen McCraney. Mac?
Thank you, Governor. I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to address the public and those here in the room. Any type of emergency response is a partnership. Not just one agency, not just one county, not just one city. I think we've demonstrated that over the past couple of years, and we've seen the response capabilities that have happened at the local level already. We've seen in Rankin County and other counties that have really gotten out. Those emergency responders, those search and rescue teams, that's what they train for, and they've done a fabulous job up to this point. And without that, MEMA couldn't exist. We have 82 and the Mississippi Man and Choctaw Indians that are out there, those counties and that entity that have trained. They're there, they're ready, and it's a daily conversation. When they need supplies, they don't have them on hand. We have forward deployed a lot of things within these counties already, so the bang to impact is not that far off anymore. So we definitely improved our abilities there. And we want to talk about just the flooding here in Jackson is relevant today. Moving up 24 hours is significant. You have limited amount of daylight now. Now you've got the rest of the day on Saturday, and you've got the rest of the day on Sunday during daylight hours to try to prepare yourself for 2020. If you were in a flooded area in 2020, count on it. That should be your watermark. That should be what you're planning for. If you have neighbors that you know that moved here 6 months ago, inform them. Let them know. Talk to your neighbors about what impacts did they have at their house. Take pictures of everything now, and then when it comes time to file your insurance, you've got it. You're moving very fast. So something to remember is when FEMA did assist us during the 2020 floods, we did not get individual assistance. So there's a lot of things that ourselves and the locals, Hinds County, and other counties have put in place. We have increased our number of long-term recovery committees within our counties. We're approximately a little bit less than 50% of the entire state has a long-term recovery committee, and those help where the state has funding available afterwards to provide building supplies and other things. Volunteer groups bring in labor, and we're able to rebuild those residences and help them out at that time. So we've done a lot to get ready to handle things on the state side with the locals, and that partnership continues. When we start looking at where's this going to go, we're looking at some moderate flooding. If you follow the Pearl River, as I'll be doing today, I've got other officers and area coordinators that are out in the east to west locations within the state right now. I'll be going south today to look at some places that have already had some flooding going on. And as the Pearl River rises, we're looking at some moderate flooding, and as it goes down into Lawrence County, Copiah County, and others. And but we still know that we have supplies, we have everything ready, and we've been talking to those emergency managers. We need to think about next week. So toward the end of next week, you've got Monday will be the peak in Jackson, and that's going to continue to go down the Pearl River. Well, guess what? We also, toward the end of the week, there is some tropical instances that might have an impact where we have severe rains in just the lower part of the state. So we're planning emergency plans for that too. We have an all hazards plan here at MEMA. All the counties do in the cities. So we're ready to look at that impact if it in fact takes place. We do hope for that it doesn't, but we always plan because Mother Nature has a plan of her own, and we will adjust anything that we need to do that. Looking at up to date right now, about 45 homes have been impacted within the state of Mississippi that we have local reports from our county emergency managers, and 13 businesses, minor to moderate damage, nothing above that. About 55 public roads. You've probably seen on a few stations, maybe the 489 highway that lost the entire culvert system out from under it. Well, if you look at the Weather Channel like I did this morning, there's a bulldozer in the bottom of that. They're laying asphalt, and they have culverts going in. So that is a true Mississippi response from the Department of Transportation, those county managers getting out there that quick and taking a catastrophic blowout in a road and looking at where they are. They are in repair and recovery mode, and we anticipate that they'll continue to work at the speed that they are. So looking at the City of Jackson, Hinds County currently have other shelter locations that can be opened if necessary. We know that we already had one, and just need to remind the last group of people, sightseers, don't come and look at the flood. We now have 24 less hours to get people out of harm's way, to get them to move their stuff, pets, you name it, their furniture, to move their life for the next probably 72 to 96 hours. Please do not come and sightsee. We don't need you there. We've got first responders. We've got people that are assessing the damages. We're assessing where the water lines are and where it might go. So we need the roadways. And the people that are trying to get out of harm's way need the roadways to get where they are. If you want to sightsee, tune into your local news channel. They have personnel that are out there. They're going to get you good information as well. They've done a fabulous job so far. So just look at it on your TV from where you are, and don't come driving into the impacted area. American Red Cross, others that we partner with, we're busy. We're moving supplies, food, water, you name it, into that affected area, and we don't need to be impeded at all. So I ask you to stay away and do that. Other than that, Governor, that finishes me up, and I'll be here to answer any questions for you if you have them.
Thank you, Mac. I appreciate those remarks and, of course, your leadership at our Emergency Management Agency. At this time, I would like to turn it over to the Senior Service Hydrologist at the National Weather Service, who is here with us today, Marty Pope. Marty?
Thank you, Governor. It's been a busy week. We've been on high alert most of the week. My coworkers, great coworkers, management here, have just been perfect for us. Been doing great things with the flash flooding and as far as trying to get everything with the current river situation, making sure everything's up to date on our web pages. Currently, what we're seeing upstream in our area is up above the reservoir. Everything up there had quite a bit of flooding. We had a modern record flood on the Tuscaloosa Creek with us, where they had almost 15 inches of rainfall in northeastern Scott County. So we're that water there has really pushed us to where we are today. But what's good, the good news really is the fact that most of the rivers in the upper parts of the basin have actually turned over. They're cresting and they're actually falling in most places. The river is just crested at Ratliff's Ferry, which is in the upper portions of the reservoir, which made it the reason we were actually seeing the peak flow coming to the gates of Ross Barnett Reservoir early tomorrow morning. And right now we're looking at approximately 67,000 cubic feet per second coming into the lake at that time. Currently, the reservoir itself is discharging 60,000 cubic feet per second out of the reservoir. One thing that we have noticed is a lot of this water is actually going into storage on the east side of Rankin, the Rankin side of the river there, which is so far has slowed things on the rise, which is helping out in evacuations because we're not seeing as fast of a rise of water as of this time period. So that is working really well. Another thing too, I understand that from Pearl River Valley Water Supply District, General Manager John Sigmund, that they're going to try to hold their pool to 298.7 before they have to open up any more. And the good thing about, that puts the lake within a foot of really being in big issues. So we're doing everything, everything's being done at the state level, the Pearl River Valley District level, and at the level where the Weather Service, the Corps of Engineers, Geological Survey are out there doing coordinating information. Unless it will rely heavily on flow measurements coming from all these stations from the United States Geological Survey. The Weather Service and the Corps of Engineers get together with their river models, and they actually coordinate these flows. That's been very critical in this process. We've been having each day conference calls since, I think, Wednesday, and that has really helped us to get a real a good look at what things are going on. Now, currently, the river stage at Jackson's at 34.63. As I said, we're coming in at 36 feet on Monday with this. Right now, we're just hoping that that's going to be, hopefully that will be the maximum of what we're going to see. Just everything looking at it. And the river at Jackson, like I said, is 34.63. We will see that slowly rise over the next 48 hours or so. Now, what we're seeing is, we've had heavy flows coming down the Strong River. We've had a lot of flooding in that area, went above flood stage there. That is going into our lower Pearl River. So we're seeing, they were saying earlier, that we're seeing moderate flooding down in that portion of the river. So they're having to keep an eye. Plus, they have high streams that are still overflowing rivers in that area. So just the whole thing will continue. One of the things, as they mentioned, that we've got going this week is we're going to have thunderstorms generally in the south area today. They'll be mostly in the scattered variety, probably through maybe Monday or Tuesday. And then we have a front dropping into the area, and that could increase our rainfall across the area. But we still think most of that will be over the southern parts of the state, but we'll have to be very aware of what's going on during the next next week. So as I said, this is a long-term type flood situation. The lake is high, so there's not going to be able to cut back really quickly, so there will be high water in the city for at least, I'd say, 5 to 7 days before we get significant falls to start coming about. I want to make sure also, remember the thing, turn around, don't drown. Do not drive into this flooded waterways or any place like that. Any of the flash flooding that's still continuing on some of the small streams. Stay away from it. You don't know what's under that water, because there could be holes there. We've seen people fall into cars, go into deep cavern that you were there. So those are some of the things that we want to make sure at the Weather Service that you guys are aware of. But as far as that, I will turn it back over to the governor.
Thank you, Marty. We also have Bill Parker with us today, who is the head meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and he is here to answer any questions. I just want to say a couple of other things before we open it to questions. As Marty said, when it comes to flooding, particularly in a situation like this, it's a little bit complicated because what you see north of the reservoir, and many of those gauges having peaked and coming down, while at the same time Jackson has not yet peaked and will not until early Monday morning. And when you start getting downriver on the Pearl, places like Monticello may not see a peak until Thursday the 1st, Columbia maybe even Friday the 2nd, and down in Pearl River County maybe not until Tuesday the 6th. And so this is a multi-day event, and a lot of that downriver flooding is going to depend upon how quickly the reservoir does or does not let out the water, based upon it maintaining a reasonable water level as well. We do appreciate Mr. Sigmund and the Pearl River Valley Water Supply District and all of their efforts. What I think you can see today is that all natural disasters require this, but certainly in flooding, the cooperation and coordination between state and local and federal agencies is incredibly important, and we are very blessed in Mississippi that we can say that we have those relationships and have built those relationships for many, many, many years that allow us to do exactly that, coordinate and cooperate and respond to whatever the situation requires. And finally, I just want to thank the American Red Cross for their work at the shelter that is open in Jackson. They, as always, step up in these challenging times. And with that, I will open the floor to any questions that you may have. We'll start over here on the far right and move around.
Governor, and this could be for Director McRaney as well. You know, the flood in 2020 was only 2 years ago. Can you talk to how having that recently in our minds, I think it's still fresh in a lot of people's minds, how has that transferred into this and the preparedness either on the state, local, and even the individual level?
You know, I will tell you, and I'll start with that and I'll let Mac answer it as well. I think the most important factor in this event is that it is on the individual level. Because I will tell you, and I remember my friends that were impacted and affected by the storm or by the flooding in 2020, it's really hard to stand on your porch on a beautiful sunny day and look out and see the water what appears to be miles away from your porch, and realize that even though it's beautiful and even though the weather is great, that water is rising even though you can't necessarily see it. And that when we say that it is going to get to 36 feet at a peak, what that means. And so I think on an individual level, having that experience of having witnessed that in 2020 is certainly very, very helpful. Clearly, the maps, a lot of the base mapping was done back in the 70s. I mean, obviously, the folks that were alive and around here in 1979 certainly remember that flood, and a lot of the base maps were built upon that. We've seen improvements in the mapping over time. 2020 certainly helped with that. We've had a lot of conversations internally that the 79 flood is certainly worth considering in the equation, but recognition that on both sides of the river south of the reservoir, both the Hinds County side and particularly the Rankin County side, there's an awful lot of development that has occurred in and around those areas which has changed exactly where all the water flows once it comes out of that out of the reservoir. And so, in terms of additional preparation, I'll turn it over to Mac to talk a little bit about the local coordination as well as the state.
Thank you. Just going back to just looking at 2020, okay, you know, those types of events, they leave a watermark, no pun intended, but it does, and it gives you a new vision on what 36-foot looks like, which some of those neighborhoods have been improved. A lot of new construction. The governor talked about it. That pushes water in different areas, streets. A lot of streets have been repaired. A lot of new construction. So even looking down flow, it doesn't flow. It didn't flow exactly like it did before in the 80s. So 2020 was kind of a real good training tool, and that's something we did with our after-action reports, along with Hinds County and the city of Jackson, to see, okay, what is this, and what did we not do very well? We did a lot of things very good during the 2020, I think we did, and we got some accomplishments, but we want to be better. We want to be faster. We want to be quicker, and that's why some of you saw me with the city of Jackson, with the mayor, and with Hinds County doing a joint press conference a couple of days ago. We're getting ahead of this now. We are now into the prep, before, the during. We've got that going very well. We're very good at that, and then the recovery afterwards. I'm trying to manage expectation of individuals, that even though if we do not get a FEMA declaration, which I was on the phone last night with the regional director, Gracia Sheck. She's constantly checking on us to see if we need anything. Of course, she's working in Kentucky and other places as well. But we had a personal conversation last night. And what do you need? Do you need anything else at this time? And I said, but and so we've got all those things lined up. Everybody's engines are idling, and we are ready to be where we need to be. If the water's lower, it's going to be great. But we want to plan for 36, and we want everybody to do that, and we want to get them out safely and then get them right back in, and then we want to be there for them during any recovery that takes place. I think that's where we've really sharpened our edge, with the Hinds County developing their long-term recovery committee and being ready that we can shorten the time period that a person has. If they have any damage to their homes and whatnot, that relief is going to be there quicker. So I think our training has paid off in that area, and that's what I would ring the bell about, is we're going to be ready on that side a lot faster and a lot better than we were last time.
For clarity, has the state already applied for a federal disaster declaration, or is that just in the works?
No, we're currently assessing all damages, and we talk about crisis track. That's something we did improve with as well. The local individual can put in, and then we know exactly where that damage is. You take pictures of your house, somebody's going to come by and verify that. So you put in those damage pictures, use that. That's for the local EMA directors to do their first assessment, and then we come in and we validate those, and then FEMA's right in. As a matter of fact, you're saying it, the FEMA director actually asked me, are you going to need PDA teams, preliminary damage assessment teams? I said, not just yet. I don't have the crest yet. Flooding is slow. Let me just kind of, when it comes up, it's going to take a few days to go down where we can really get in there and get those damage assessments done. So going to have to be, flooding is one of the slowest disasters. You got to have patience. We don't. We want to get in and we want to fix it quickly, but that is one that we have to temper for the right time, and I think we're definitely ready for it. I've got the resources going back up to FEMA if I need them. They're there. They're ready on a call. They're 7 hours there on the ground, and they're here to help. So we've got those teams on alerted that if we need them, we'll bring them in. Other than that, MEMA's team will get out there and do our damage assessments more timely probably than we did last time.
Director McCraney, those 45 homes and 13 businesses impacted, you mentioned, where are those located?
Well, I'll get you that afterwards. I've got in the first locally declared counties that they declared a local emergency. So we've got Wilkerson, Rankin, Hinds, Leake, Newton, Clark, and the city of Jackson. So those counties, and that is where those numbers come from across that area, and that includes businesses, roads as well, public roads 54 in that. We know about the one major one, Newton, but it's being worked on as we speak. I'm going to be proud of that one. I'll drive across it maybe Sunday afternoon, hopefully. But that's the areas. And we can get more specific if we need to later.
Well, I had a question for Marty or Bill. Just in terms of the timing of the year of this particular crest, a lot of the high crests in Jackson with the Pearl we've seen over the years have been earlier in the year, in the spring, or later towards the winter. Is it notable or indicative of anything at all that this is happening in the summer?
Well, typically, you're right, in the springtime, that's when we see our flood seasons, but you can get a flood anytime. One old meteorologist once told me significant rainfall always lead to significant flooding. And so that's what we're dealing with. We've tripled our rainfall. Our average rainfall for this time of year is about 4 inches. We're at 12 inches. And so when you get that type of rainfall, you're going to get some flooding.
One other thing, just to add to that too, looking back at everything, we haven't really, I don't think we found a crest for Jackson this high in August. So and usually you can get something associated with maybe a tropical storm or hurricane or something like that, but this was very tropical moist air, but was just a system that sort of drug off to the south there and just hung here for so long with very deep moisture. That's getting that this time of year is still a fairly rare thing, you know, to get that real intense rain like we got out of this, but outside of a major tropical system or tropical depression even.
I'll just say one thing. We try not to use those words, tropical storm or hurricane. But to be fair and to let everyone in Mississippi know, there are two systems that are south of the Gulf of Mexico at this time, but both have a chance of entering the Gulf, probably at least 10 days out. If either of them form, if either of them do enter the Gulf, that will lead to additional rainfall potentially. Hopefully it's 10 days to 2 weeks out, and most of this rainfall has moved on. But I do just want to point that out. In our business, in the emergency management business, while we are certainly planning for the crest of this particular event on early Monday in Jackson, we are also looking at what this is going to mean downriver all the way to the Gulf, but we're also looking out 7 days, 10 days, 2 weeks at potential events that could exacerbate this and other challenges. So. Yes, sir.
So, Governor, for the residents in Jackson who will take this advice, when should they start evacuating? And if they do have to evacuate, how long should they expect to be removed from their homes?
Well, what I would say is, rather than saying when they should, I will just say that daylight will end sometime approximately 36 hours from now. Daylight ending on Sunday is a time frame that they should seriously consider if they got water in 2020. If they weren't living in their current residence at that time, talk to your neighbor. Ask them where the water line came to in 2020. Go online and look at the maps that are available. And so, you know, I can't tell you when to evacuate, but what I can tell you is daylight or really dusk on Sunday evening is a pretty much that event when it's almost too late at that point. But because for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is if the home that you are living in is likely to get water, it's pretty likely that the roadway that you would need to take to get out is going to get water before that, and therefore I would just say monitor that very, very closely. In terms of how long they will be out of their home, that's obviously not something that we can predict at this time. One of the things that was mentioned earlier, in all of these scenarios and all of these events, there's always or there's oftentimes both good news and not so good news that occurs, and sometimes it's simultaneous. The good news that was mentioned earlier is the reservoir has been able to pump out water into the lower Pearl at a rate that is not significantly greater today than it was yesterday, and it wasn't significantly greater yesterday than it was the day before, and it is a little bit less than it was 2 years ago. That's encouraging. We hope that continues with the peaking of the gauges north of the reservoir, and what we're seeing today, we think that is likely, that 60,000 number will remain constant. We can't guarantee it, but if it does, what we hope that allows for is the water over the next 48 hours to continue to move downriver, which, again, good news, bad news. That's good news for Jackson, perhaps not so good news downriver. And so some of these peak times that I've mentioned in areas downriver could very well occur sooner than 5 days out, 6 days out. And so monitor this situation very, very closely if you are anywhere near the Pearl River. A couple things I just want to mention, because I think it's important, because we want to be 100% transparent. The 2020 event was significant, but I want to be transparent with everyone. FEMA did not approve individual assistance in the 2020 event, and that being the case, we're certainly going to ask for it again. But again, I wouldn't go into the next 24, 48, 72 hours anticipating that FEMA is going to quickly approve individual assistance. As you all know, Mac spoke with Gracia yesterday. She has stood on this podium with us countless times in the last 2.5 years, probably more times than she would have liked. She's a great partner. FEMA is a great partner for us, but I would not expect that individual assistance is guaranteed in this particular event. The other thing I will tell you is when you look at water getting in your home, I think it's important to be transparent. Mac mentioned take pictures of your homes both before, during, and or before and after. That's very important. But I also want to point out that if you get less than 18 inches of water in your home, the likelihood that it will be considered fully destroyed by FEMA is pretty low. And so, again, please take pictures and please prepare for that.
Questions? Governor, Justin Michaels from the Weather Channel. As far as the importance of evacuations and stressing that, especially for folks who may have just moved to the area, can you talk to us about, for people who say, oh, I'm not going to evacuate, talk to us about the importance of evacuations, and also from the National Weather Service, nighttime flooding, the concern about that and the dangers associated with nighttime flooding over daytime flooding. It's a different animal.
Well, so we're fortunate to live in a great state. We're fortunate to have Mississippians who not only are here to look out for themselves and their family members, but we have a lot of people who are willing to look out for others as well. The challenge is both in terms of if you should evacuate and you don't, if we have to send teams in, we will. And we have tremendous assets and tremendous resources for search and rescue, we have boats, we have individuals, but every time we send one of those rescue teams in, it puts those individuals at danger. And as you mentioned, when that occurs at night, that danger is significantly greater than if it occurs during the daytime. And so if you evacuated in 2020, we strongly encourage you to do so again. We don't have, to my knowledge, any mandatory evacuations from the state at this time. Let me say that again. We do not have any mandatory evacuations from the state at this time. But we do want to take care of ourselves, and we don't want individuals to make bad decisions which then put us in the position to have to send rescue teams in and put themselves and their lives at danger. Again, rising water is different than hurricanes, and so it's and the risk levels are different as well. But we certainly want to be smart, be cognizant. If you received water, if you think you received water in 2020, if you look out and you see rising water from your front door or from your back door, be smart. Be smart. Take care of yourselves and take care of your family, but also take into consideration, if things get bad, the risk that you put others in as well. So, you want to come in? Okay.
Yeah, so nighttime flooding is significant. Most people who die in flood events die at night. And as the governor said, it's best to make your preparations during the daytime and go ahead on and get out. Once water starts moving in, then they want to get out. And if we go back to the turnaround, don't drown. Most people who die in flood events often die in vehicles because they don't know how deep the water is and they feel very protected in their vehicles. And so this is a significant situation. As the water begins to rise, you know, there'll be roads that's going to be flooded, and we don't want people to drive through them. We don't want people to walk through them. 6 inches of water can knock a person off their feet. 2 feet of water can pick up a car and move it off the road if it's moving real fast. And so those are the situations that we're dealing with as we deal with this flood event. So when it comes to nighttime, as the governor said, and I'm just going to repeat it, take care of your situation during the daytime so that when you're at the nighttime situation, you can be in a safe place and resting. That's what we're supposed to be doing at night, resting.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, and Governor, just one more time, could you tell us the shelters that will be made available for residents impacted by the flooding, the potential flooding?
Yeah, the one shelter that I know that is open today is the Red Cross has opened a shelter at the Jackson Police Training Academy, which is at 3000 St. Charles Street in the city of Jackson.
That's correct.
That's the only one that we have open at this time. Should there become a need to open additional shelters, we'll work with the local emergency management team to make sure that those shelters are open. And by the way, overnight there was one individual in that shelter. So we have plenty of capacity at this time, but we'll monitor that. If in fact it becomes necessary to open others, we'll do that at the appropriate time.
Governor, and also for everybody else, you know, river flooding, you talked about it being a very slow and almost methodical. It's not like flash flooding. It doesn't happen in a flash and go down in a flash. We're talking about a weeks-long flooding event. Just again, to paint the picture in people's minds who may not have lived through this, weren't in town in 2020, don't know what this is going to be like, because right now people's minds are thinking of Wednesday and flash flooding, and it's everything's flooded all of a sudden, then it's gone. This is very, very different. So can we talk about that?
Yeah, no question, and it's the scenario that I tried to describe earlier, which is it's really hard to envision rising water when you can walk out on your you can walk out your front door, or you can walk out on your porch and you can look out and see no water today, see no water, and look up and see the sun. But I will tell you that if you are in a low-lying area, and if you weren't here in 2020, we have maps available that we want you to go look at on our website here in front of you. The mapping is going to be very accurate, and it's going to give pretty good indications. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to give very good indications of where that's going to be. But the other point I want to just make also is just because your home may not be likely to flood doesn't mean you should not evacuate. So let me explain that to you. Either if your home is in a higher area, but every road around you is in a lower area, then you either need to be able to sustain yourself for at least 72 hours inside your home, or you need to get out before the water actually gets over the roadway leading into your home. So just because you didn't get water in 2020, or just because you think you're in a higher lying area, assess the situation based upon how can I get into, and how can someone get me, or how can I get supplies, etc. Either stock up, take care of yourself for at least 72 hours, or go to a friend or someone's, hopefully a loved person's home to visit for while this water subsides. And so I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on that.
Yeah, I'll give a little bit on this. Yeah, here's another thing, too. It's been 2 years. Things happen in 2 years. So another thing that could happen, too, somebody may have built a house, there may be a ditch or something that had been dug, and the water will flow through and didn't come in the last time. But this time it may get and cut your road off. That's the key, like we were talking about the nighttime. Make sure you do everything during the day because of that, because you can easily can get trapped into your area there. But another part of this has to do with this particular flood. The 2020 flood, the reservoir was able to cut that flow really quick. The water levels receded fairly quick during 2020. We had ample storage at that time because they had the lake down because of the salvinia. Of course, this is summer season, which is recreation season and water supplies, and that keeps a high lake. This is not a flood control reservoir. So this time they're going to have to keep the water levels up longer because the lake is very high now. It's like I said, it'll be almost 3 feet above 3 to 4 feet above normal levels for this time of year, which is not good. We don't like to keep it that high, as at least the Pearl River Valley doesn't. That is. So those are some things too. And I want to give one extra thing too. On our website too, we have that the Weather Service, the Corps of Engineers has got a viewer out there, and I think the MEMA has that as well. It's with the Weather Service, cooperation with the Weather Service's National Water Center, as well as the United States Geological Survey. The Corps of Engineers and them all have worked on having this flood inundation mapping out there. We have a viewer on our website, which is water.gov. at water.gov/JAN, and at the very top in our headlines, you should see a link to that viewer and on our page as well. So just want to let you know. Yes?
From a hydrology perspective, I know there are a lot of variables, from streams to creeks, tributaries, water releases from the reservoir, which are extraordinarily high right now.
Right.
I think when I looked it up, we're talking, it's now more than Niagara Falls every second coming out of that reservoir,
Right.
something crazy,
Yeah.
right? Are you fairly confident that 36, and I know there are variables that maybe we can't even account for, but you're looking at all the data, is 36 where you think that it's going to max out there, or is there potential that it could go higher?
Put it this way, I will say that we believe that will be our max. You can, like you said, there's factors out there that sometimes you don't see, but we think that will probably be the maximum with everything that we're seeing right now. I mean, hope could be, if they're able to let the reservoir rise and hold their discharge, hopefully we can come in even a little less. But that 36 is definitely the one you got to watch that. But we're fairly confident in that 36 feet.
And again, pushed up by 24 hours, which is probably
Yeah.
a bigger deal right now.
And the good thing, well, that's a good thing too.
Okay.
And the reason it's a good thing, I mean, it's if you wanted to wait and put off your evacuations, that wasn't a great thing, but it's a good thing to get this crest through here, finally start to get that reservoir down before we start getting into a greater rain, more rain beginning towards the end of the week possibly. Of course, that'll affect our people downstream and on the lower parts of the Pearl could be. So we're just going to, and they can get a lot of local flow just from their own water falling over their area. So, but as of now, as of what we've been thinking about, everything on our conference calls, the 36 feet looks really good. We feel even more confident today than we did that it's going to stay within that range. Okay?
Okay, seeing no further questions at this time, I want to thank everyone for being here. I hope at a minimum you leave here and leave this press conference thinking, well, at least the governor's smart enough to bring the smart people with him to answer the hard questions. I appreciate this team that is advising us throughout this, and we are certainly praying for everyone in Mississippi. Stay safe out there, and God bless.